Hey guys, how's it going? F8 Alpha here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are taking a little bit of a different approach to World of Tanks. We're going to look at the top 3 per tier highest DPM tanks that you can get right now, or that are available right now, I should say. So, let's get into it here. And the top tank with the highest DPM for tier 5 would be the Panzer IV, running the 105mm derp, as you see here. This is a German medium tier 5 tank. Now you do have a couple selections with the guns when you pick up this tank. You have 275mm and you have the 105. And for the highest DPM at tier 5, you have to run the 105mm. It does 2,625 DPM. As you can see here, I have some ventilation on it, and I have the rammer, and it takes up to 3,100, which is pretty amazing for a tier 5 tank, especially a medium tank with a turret. Now let's move on to our second tank at tier 5. We have the 105mm LEF 18B2. Now this is somewhat of a tough tank to get your hands on. It is a premium artillery, and it's usually not available in the premium shop too often, so if you see it, definitely pick it up. It is a fast firing artillery, a very fast firing artillery. As you see here, 6 rounds per minute rate of fire. However, with a gun rammer and a crew with brothers in arms, you can get this up to 8 rounds, and that takes the damage per minute up to 31,035. Now, if you have no equipment, no crew in this, you're looking at a DPM of 2,258. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, this fires HE, and that's what this DPM challenge or comparison does include. Next, we have the T-34 and the Type 34. Both of these are pretty much photocopies of each other. The T-34 is obviously Russian, and the Type 34 is obviously Chinese. Personally, I am a big fan of the Type 34 here. Now, for this DPM comparison here, we have 2,217 DPM, and that is with the 57mm, as you do have a choice of 2 guns on here. The 57mm is the one to go with. It will give you the highest DPM on this tank. Moving forward, let's have a look at tier 6. For the tank in tier 6 with the highest DPM, we are looking at the Jagdpanzer IV, running the L56 short 88, as you see here. Now this tank does have a DPM of 2,550 when equipped with the short 88, and it does have a 1.7 second aim time, which is phenomenal. That is outstanding. Let's move forward to our next. Our second tank with the highest DPM at tier 6 would be the Nashorn. This is obviously a tier 6 German tank destroyer. Now for this DPM, for the 2,384 DPM, you are going to have to equip the 88, the L71 88, which is the longer 88. This is like the same 88mm that I can find in the Tiger. And like I said, this does have a DPM of 2,384, which is phenomenal. I actually do not have this tank or the Jagdpanzer IV in my garage at the moment. Both these tanks I had to grind through already, and I have sold them. But let's move on to our last tank in tier 6. So our third entry into the highest DPM at tier 6 would be the A-43, the Soviet medium. As you see here, it has a DPM of 2,086, which is fairly good. Obviously, it places third in this comparison. Now, a long time ago, there was the option to equip the 57 millimeter, and that brought up the DPM by about 200 more. However, since they updated this, you cannot equip the 57 millimeter anymore with this tank. However, this makes the third entry into the highest DPM at tier 6. Let's move on to tier 7. The tank with the highest DPM at tier 7 is the ISU 122S. As you can see here, this is a Soviet TD. It runs the 122 millimeter, as you can find on like the IS heavy tanks or the other tank destroyers in the Soviet line. This is a super popular gun with the Soviet tanks, 122 millimeter. It does 390 alpha damage per shot, and without equipment and without a crew, it has a base DPM of 3,162, which is phenomenal. That is very, very good. I think that's in the top 3 in the entire game, actually. So let's keep that in mind if you're looking at picking this up. This is a premium tank. It is in the premium shop from time to time. It does not have a turret, obviously. The second entry into tier 7 with the highest DPM would be the SU-152, running the 122 millimeter. Now this is very much identical to the ISU 122S. They both have the same gun, the same aim time, and the same dispersion values. However, this is not a premium tank, and you can pick this one up by grinding your way to it, so that you don't have to spend actual money in order to acquire this tank. And you can still have, as you can see here, basically 3,300 DPM, just under 3,300 DPM, which is phenomenal. And this, like I said, this is not a premium tank, so you can pick this up. Anybody can pick this up. And our final entry at tier 7 for the highest DPM goes to the SU 12244. Once again, running the 122 millimeter. Now this is a premium TD, tier 7, obviously. And it has a base damage with no equipment equipped, have 2,925, aspersion of 0.41. Once again, this is a premium. This is one that you can pick up in the premium shop almost year round. It's in there now. You can go check that out. One thing to know with this is it does have decent sloped armor, so it can bounce a couple of shots. Obviously, it's only 90 millimeters thick. However, when it comes to landing those shots and dealing 390 or more alpha damage to your targets, this is a fantastic choice as far as a tank destroyer goes. And the tank with the highest DPM in tier 8 goes to the AT-15, running the 20-pounder Type B barrel, as you can see here. Now this tank does have a 2,870 DPM with no equipment on it and no crew skills, making this one of the higher tanks in the game as far as DPM goes. It has a 1.7 second aim time and a 0.30 dispersion on it, making it very accurate and very quick when it comes to aiming. Some of the key features of the AT-15A are its thick armor. You can see 228 millimeters of frontal armor. Now that is only in certain locations. It's not the entire front here. Obviously, this tank does have a tremendous weak point. That is the little gunner's turret here. Or alternatively, you can shoot it right through this this mantlet here. If you can land a square shot through here with a gun of 200 plus pen, you can pen this tank without an issue. Let's keep that in mind. It is a little bit slow. Obviously, it doesn't have a turret. It does have very good gun traverse on it with the gun. So I think it has, what, 10 degrees in either direction. It can swing or swivel this gun in order to engage the enemies. Moving on to our second entry at tier 8, we have the Jigtech 88. This is running, obviously, the 88 millimeter. This does a 2,666 damage per minute with no equipment equipped and no crew skills. It does have a 2-second aim time, and a .31 dispersion on the gun, making it very accurate and very rapid fire. As you can see, it can fire 13 rounds per minute, which makes it very, very rapid firing at tier 8. And it does have somewhat lackluster penetration, as this is the standard 88 that you can get at tier 7 or even at tier 6 with the Nashorn. It only has 200 penetration and has an alpha damage of 240. However, this tank does have very, very good upper superstructure armor. So that's basically this portion here where the turret would be. It's about 250 millimeters thick. And once again, this is the Tiger front end. So the lower plate is the weak point. So just keep that in mind for engaging one of these. Or alternatively, you can swing around the side of it, as it doesn't have a turret and it is a little bit slow on the traversing. You can go ahead and just get around the backside of it, and he's pretty much helpless to go ahead and defend himself. And our final tank with the highest DPM in our comparison here is the T-28, running the 120 millimeter. This has a 2.1 second aim time. It has a 0.38 dispersion on it. And once again, this is a 120 millimeter. So you're doing a alpha damage of 400, and you have 248 millimeters of penetration with this gun. One thing to note with this tank is it does have very, very thick frontal armor, 254 millimeters of frontal armor. Now that is basically the upper superstructure here, and as you can see, it is angled. But alternatively, it does have weak points. So you have the lower glacis here, or if you have a gun with higher penetration, you can go ahead and just punch through his upper plate right here. But most of the time, you're either going to go ahead and swing around the backside of him and get his flanks, or you'll go ahead and just shoot his commander's hatches here, or the driver and commander's hatch, as those are the weak points on this tank. But like I said, the best bet is to go ahead and swing around the backside of them if you're in a medium or light tank or something like that. That is fairly quick and mobile. That is the best way to engage one of these. Definitely do not sit in front of this tank, as he will be punching giant holes into you with this 120 millimeter gun. For our first entry into tier 9, the highest DPM tank at tier 9, we have the Tortoise, running the 120 millimeter. This does have a 400 alpha damage per shot on it. It does have a 0.31 dispersion, a 1.7 second aim time, and a base DPM value of 3,380, making it the highest DPM tank in the game. Some quick notes about the Tortoise. It does have, once again, very, very decent armor, especially for a TD. 128 millimeters of frontal armor is very good. However, it does have a very, very huge blaring weakness, and that is the machine gun hatch, the commander's hatch, up top here. This can be punched through by guns of about 200 millimeters of penetration. So you're talking about pretty much... well, most tier 8s can test this without an issue. So just keep that in mind. Now, the matlet on this thing is ridiculously thick, and I think that the matlet, to try and go ahead and get through that, is somewhere around 500 millimeters, so it's basically impossible to penetrate. However, there are other weak points in this tank. If you're firing some kind of premium ammunition, you can go ahead and hit these big flat... however, they are angled, but these flatter areas here, if you for some reason cannot get the machine gun port, or alternatively swing around his backside, as you can see here, his back and side here, and he is helpless because he does not have a turret. He does have 20 degrees in either direction to swing or swivel his gun to engage you, so just keep that in mind, that even though he might be angled, he can still engage you with the gun traverse that it has. Also, this thing has a phenomenal amount of hit points. It has 2,000, And for a tank destroyer, that is very healthy. Even for a heavy tank, that's very healthy at tier 9. So just keep that in mind. Our second entry at tier 9 with the highest DPM goes to the Conway. Once again, another British tank taking the highest DPM at tier 9. And once again, this is running the 120 millimeter. That is also found on the Tortoise. However, the Conway does have a turret, and it does have slightly different values on the gun due to the turret. It has a dispersion of 0.32, it has an aim time of 1.9, and has a base DPM without any equipment or crew of 3,076. Now this is built on the Centurion chassis. You basically just mount the huge 120 millimeter on a Centurion chassis. And things to note about the Conway is that it has very, very mediocre or weak armor. For instance, the hull is only 76 millimeters thick. So basically everything shooting at you, including tier 7s, unless there's some kind of crazy angling going on, they will have a very good chance of punching right through your upper plate, not to mention your lower plate. Also, the turret is 132 millimeters thick. However, you cannot really count on that, as it is a very big target, and if you get the side of it or the rear of it, you can basically punch through this turret with HE rounds from pretty much any tier 8 tank. So just keep that in mind, that if you're engaging one of these, that HE can do quite the damage very quickly, either hitting the turret or even hitting the engine compartment here. You do massive amounts of damage very quick to the Conway. Let's go ahead and move forward to our final tank in this comparison with the highest DPM. The third tank at tier 9 with the highest DPM goes to the SU-122-44. It has an alpha damage of 440 due to the 122 millimeter gun that it mounts on this tank. It does have 258 millimeters of penetration. It also has a 2.5 second aim time and a dispersion of 0.34. However, this tank is fairly sneaky compared to the other two top DPM dealers in this comparison. And that's kind of the strong point of this tank destroyer versus the other two that we have seen previously, is it does have a better camouflage concealment percentage. So just keep that in mind. And also the 258 millimeters of penetration are very good at punching through heavy tanks and very heavily armored tank destroyers or whatever is in front of you. Obviously you can load some premium rounds and it takes your penetration up to 340. So if you're firing at something like a Type 5, you obviously cannot contest the frontal armor of a Type 5 with this gun running the standard AP rounds. You will have to switch to the HE rounds, and at that point you can go ahead and punch straight through the Type 5's heavily armored front end there. And finally we made our way all the way up to tier 10, and for tier 10 the highest DPM dealing tank goes to the STRV 103B. This tank does have a 105 millimeter gun on it, does have a 390 alpha damage per shot, and it does have a blistering rate of fire of 9. Not to mention it has a standard AP penetration of 308 millimeters of penetration. When the tank is in siege mode, the aim time I believe goes down to a 1.6 or 1.7, and the dispersion is a 0.28 from what I recall, making this the most accurate tank in the game. Let's go ahead and move forward to our second tank in this comparison at tier 10. The T-57, running obviously the 120 millimeter gun on it. It does have a DPM of 3,096 with no equipment or crew skills equipped on it. It has a dispersion of 0.35 and has an aim time of 2.9. This does have an alpha damage of 400. This tank does equip a autoloader that contains 4 rounds in the drum before you have to reload. The last tank to enter this comparison at tier 10 with the highest DPM goes to the Object 263. Now this does have a 130 millimeter gun on it, doing 550 alpha damage per shot. It has a DPM of 3,084 when no crew or equipment is equipped. It has a dispersion of 0.32 and an aim time of 2.5. One thing to note on this tank is it has a 250 millimeter thick frontal armor rating. As you can see here, this plate in the front of the superstructure is very thick and it is angled, increasing your thickness if you're driving this tank, making it very tough to penetrate. However, you can either fire premium shells straight through the gun matlet. If you're obviously in a tier 10 or tier 9, you can fire premium shells straight through the gun matlet. Or alternatively, if you have the lower plate, you can go ahead and fire premium rounds through that too. However, one of the best ways to engage this tank is to get behind it, but this tank does have a very fast traverse speed of 33 degrees and a specific power or horsepower per ton of 18, making it pretty difficult to get behind unless you happen to get the jump on him or he's engaging somebody else. So with that said, guys, that's our comparison. That's the top 3 highest DPM tanks per tier, starting off at tier 5. That's going to do it for me, guys. I am F8 Alpha, and I will catch you guys next time.